attention seeker you've ever met. So Brian was this guy in our senior year who literally couldn't let anyone else have a moment. Birthday party? Brian gives a 20-minute speech nobody asked for. Someone comes out, Brian shows up in drag to support them. Every single moment had to be about him somehow. And unfortunately, he was the only person who could afford the other bedroom in my apartment, so I was stuck with him as my roommate, which meant I always escaped to study elsewhere. Like that night when my OChem lab partner Amy and I were supposed to be studying at her place, but we'd ordered pad thai instead. When I got up to leave, she called out, "Say hi to Brian for me," with this little laugh because I'd been complaining about how my roommate never shut up. The next morning, her best friend who'd skipped our study session called me screaming and crying that Amy was gone, that she'd overdosed sometime after I left, and I literally collapsed on our kitchen floor. When I finally dragged myself home from the police station and called my mom sobbing, Brian was eavesdropping from the living room, and within minutes, this vulture was crafting a Facebook announcement about our devastating loss. He kept saying he deserved to break the news because he understood grief, and watching him try to steal her death made me physically sick knowing her actual last words were about him. I literally ripped his laptop away and told him absolutely not. Her best friend should tell people, or her parents, not some guy who couldn't remember her last name without checking Instagram. But Brian actually argued he was more emotionally equipped to break the news properly, like informing people their friend died was his Oscar moment. He eventually backed off, but spent the rest of the day posting vague statuses about processing a devastating loss without mentioning Amy's name. People started sending him hearts and crying emojis. This man was already harvesting sympathy before most people even knew someone had died. I hoped he'd stop at the sympathy posts, but no. Brian went into absolute overdrive with his grief performance. He organized candlelight vigils in the quad, giving long speeches about their deep friendship to anyone who'd listen. At the memory book signing, this man wrote 2.5 pages, while Amy's actual best friend, who spent every holiday with Amy's family, wrote half a page. He tried getting himself listed as a coordinator on the mental health fundraiser we organized, even though he didn't donate a penny. The Instagram posts were the absolute worst part because he'd dig up photos from random apartment parties, crop them to show just him and Amy somewhere in the background, then write these novels about their profound conversations and how she understood him like nobody else. The one time they'd actually talked at a party, she'd asked him to move so she could get to the bathroom. He started telling professors he needed extensions because of his grief, carrying tissues everywhere and making sure people saw him dabbing his eyes in the dining hall. I literally caught him practicing sad faces in our bathroom mirror one morning, and the whole thing was like watching someone method act their way through someone else's tragedy. But all of that was just the warm-up for his main performance. The memorial service in the campus chapel was packed when Brian practically sprinted to the microphone during open sharing. He started with this story about the last time he saw Amy, then dropped this bombshell claiming they'd had dinner together the week before she died at that trendy seafood place downtown, how they'd shared the lobster special and talked for hours about post-graduation fears. She was scared about leaving college, he said with his voice cracking perfectly on cue. We bonded over that incredible lobster bisque. She told me she felt like she was drowning in expectations. The chapel went dead silent. Amy's mom gasped, and her dad stood up so fast his program fell to the floor. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he said, his voice carrying across the entire chapel. Amy's 16-year-old sister shouted from the front row, "Amy was deathly allergic to shellfish. She's been allergic since she was 5. She carried an EpiPen everywhere. Do you even know her? What is wrong with you?" Brian's face went from performative sadness to pure panic. He started stammering. Maybe it wasn't lobster, maybe it was chicken, maybe he was thinking of someone else. But this man couldn't stop himself, launching into this speech about how grief makes us all remember things differently, and we shouldn't let details divide us in our mourning. That's when my brain made the connection that made my blood run cold. The hand gestures, the dramatic pauses, even the specific phrases. "Holy shit," I said loud enough for everyone to hear. "That's Tyler's speech. You're giving the same speech you gave at Tyler's funeral freshman year." Tyler had died from cancer freshman year, completely different person. But Brian was literally recycling his memorial material. Other people who'd been at both funerals started recognizing it. Oh my god, he's right. It's word for word the same. Amy's dad didn't wait for security. He walked straight up to Brian. "Get the hell out of my daughter's memorial, now." Security escorted Brian out while Amy's family watched in complete disgust, and within days, someone had made a TikTok comparing his Tyler and Amy speeches side by side that everyone on campus saw. He moved out of our apartment 2 weeks later without saying a word, transferred schools the next semester, and Amy's best friend moved into his room. To this day, he still has no idea what her actual last words were.